Hey everyone, welcome to the results of the first community challenge for the Phoenix Miniature Art Discord. The theme for this challenge was black and white, the idea being if we remove colour from the equation, it can help people improve when they're just focusing on value. So we're going to go over some feedback, some genuine feedback for everyone. For anyone who does want to get involved, we are doing our next community challenge. It's starting on the 1st of May and it is actually going to be a joint collaboration with the Phoenix community and also the Get Good community. The challenge is going to be based around the theme of cute. You'll have the whole of May, and then what we'll do is at the end, we'll do a feedback video once again. The difference is you'll get feedback from myself, Lucas, who you can see on screen alongside me, and also Bruce and Magnus. So if you want to get involved, either feel free to check out the Get Good community, they are amazing, or join the Phoenix Miniature Art Discord. As always, I hope you enjoy the video. Let us know what you think in the comments. Bearing in mind this is a community video, so keep them polite or I will block them. And make sure you hit the like button. Here we go. So first up we have this piece. I don't know the name of the piece, but it's really lovely. This one is from Ali. And I genuinely think this is absolutely lovely. Black and white is really hard to work with. What do you think, Lucas?
I really love it. You can tell the difference between all the materials from the cardigan, the shirt, and the skin and the hair. Everything has a unique texture and feel to it.
The texture on the shirt's amazing, isn't it? The white shirt. Really, really nice. So, texture's great. The value range is really great. I think the overall result has sold really, really well. I'm really impressed with the eyes as well, actually, because the eyes have still got quite a lot of life in them, which can be quite difficult when you remove other types of contrast, especially colour.
When you remove the colour, the hue and saturation, you kind of suffer a lot of readability of elements. Yeah. But you can tell what everything is in this model. You can see the earrings, the bandana and the hair. Yeah. You can see everything on the model. Yeah. And it has a nice character to it as well. It's a nice warm feeling. And I like the fact of, one of the big things that I do like is she's still maintaining some brush marks in the face, but obviously, you know, with youthful skin, generally, like too many brush marks or brush marks that are too intense can age a character. Yeah. I think there's a really nice balance of that. Yeah, I agree. Now, on the flip side of that, we did promise to give actual feedback as opposed to just being really nice about everything. So, in your opinion, I'll let you start this off. Put some pressure on. What would you, if we were to focus on like the biggest things that will have the, like, not necessarily the biggest things, but the things that will have the biggest impact on a piece to help people, what would you say in this one? It's very small, maybe on the fringe. The highlight could be a bit more tight, uniform across, but also the value range on certain fabrics is maybe a bit too much, especially on the shadow of the collar. It goes down here. That's a bit too dark for the material. Yeah. The same with the cardigan, where you've got like this bit on the lapel. Yeah. A bit too dark.
So you're saying make the fringe smaller? Yeah, it depends. Not make the fringe, make the shadow smaller.
Maybe even make it a bit more contrasty. Depends how shiny you want the hair to appear, because especially on the fringe line, when it's the furthest thing forward on a model and it's closest to the face, you push that contrast.
I think it's also about pulling people into where the focal point is, isn't it? Yeah. So the big thing is, like, when I look at this, if you do exactly what you're talking about and push the... So first of all, if you make the highlight on the fringe smaller, what happens is obviously it becomes a little bit more potent because the light's surrounded by more dark. And then if you push the light on the fringe as you're saying, what ends up happening is it pushes focus, it pulls focus more upwards, which is where you want people to look.
Yeah. Then you can bridge it in with the skin tones a bit more if you're to bring more of a bounce light. Because if it is a shiny hair, it's gonna...
Which generally clean, youthful hair is shiny.
Yeah, so you can have a nice bounce light on the bottom of that fringe.
Yeah.
So it's less of a...
I think there is a slight bounce light. Yeah, it could be the picture, but yeah, I completely agree. Interestingly enough, on that vein, so I completely agree with you. What I would add to it, and this is just like a bit of a generalization when we talk about this idea of pushing focus where we want it to go. And I'm going to do a really dodgy paint over here. But everything on the lower half, the shirt, the jacket, is very bright across the whole thing. It's so weird because normally I'd switch this stuff to grayscale, but obviously it's already there. This is going to be a really bad paint over, but basically what happens is if you lower the value range slightly on the whole bottom half of that jacket, and even the shirt to an extent, what happens is it just naturally pushes focus upwards, and it makes your focal area pop more because it pushes you more into that direction, effectively.
Yeah, you're tightening the composition.
Absolutely.
The piece.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are probably the biggest things with this that I think would help it as a next step. And I think the idea of tightening a focal composition, as you put it, is so incredibly powerful, especially on larger scale models, because obviously the priority changes, or the priorities shift when you go to smaller scale. So things with busts, like composition is so huge. Whereas with a smaller miniature, you can obviously just paint everything high contrast and it will still look good. Whereas if you do that on a bust, it tends to look a little bit fake.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I love this one. Really, really nice. Next. So this one's Duncan's. There's going to be a pattern here. I really like this. I think this is a hard model to paint, right? I always say this, female skin is very difficult. Youthful female skin is very difficult to paint because of that balance with brush marks. Because you're kind of forced into this idea of smoothness, but if you go too smooth, it looks like a doll.
Yeah.
It looks very plastic.
Not only that, for this model, it's an eco-galaxy model, it's cyberpunk.
And
what do you think when you picture those models in your head?
Yeah, absolutely.
Colour.
Yeah. So this is a real challenge. So I think well done on the torso, right? Genuinely, that is a hard section to paint, especially when you're this close to using white, right? Because as you know, like the more white you use, the chalkier the paint goes, the harder it is to blend. Like, I'll level with you, I wouldn't have done this model because I wouldn't have wanted that battle.
Yeah.
No, not a chance. So genuinely,
I learned halfway on my own model, even though there's a tiny bit of skin, it was still the hardest part of the model to paint.
Yeah, absolutely. So well done, like genuinely. I love the blade on this. Like, I don't want to detract from everything, the story, like what's going on. The blade is awesome, really, really cool.
Yeah. I really like the subtlety of the anatomy on the skin, because skin is hard to do, it's done well, but it's also really hard for female skin to get some form and tone without overdoing it.
Yeah.
And this is a really nice balance. Also, jumping around the model, I really like the leather. Everyone knows I really love squiggly lines.
Yeah.
But it works really well.
Yeah. Okay. So, feedback-wise, like to improve. Like, genuinely, it is lovely. The mask is really cool. I think it's a really great result. Feedback-wise, where would you go? I feel like what we said on the previous piece can be applied here, to be honest with you. But I'm curious to know what you think.
My main issue is that the torso is more of a focal point in terms of value than the face.
Yes.
Like, the torso is really bright overall. But we have more dark tone on the face than we do on the whole of the torso. Yeah,
that whole torso could be reversed. As in, that torso, we could drop the value down on that torso.
Yeah.
So it's more in line with the face.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm just going over the whole thing. This isn't perfectly correct. And then on the flip side of that, you could push the face up to the value that you had on the torso, and it would flip the composition.
It's tricky with models like this where the features are very smooth and also you have next to no features.
Yeah.
Where to put your value.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also think the hair is so the hair is an incredibly powerful tool, but especially in female cyberpunk pieces, because it's almost always like a luminous bright color. It's almost always really, really shiny. And I would probably say with this, the hair is a little bit of a lost opportunity because that hair can be pushed drastically, and that will once again bring the focus upwards. And the thing is, the jacket is so nice, and the jacket is framed, the jacket frames this so well that you have an opportunity for basically extreme light next to that extreme dark frame. And I think that's probably the most important thing with this. I don't think a huge amount needs to be adjusted as such. I think compositionally it's still it's still the problem is composition. It's just this whole idea of, same as what we talked about with Ali, the whole lower section could be darker, and then that pushes focus upwards. You lower the value range, and it makes the face the focal point.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, I don't know about you, but when I'm teaching, one of the big things that comes up all the time is this idea of people coming to us and going and effectively being great painters. Like, they know how to paint, they've got amazing results, and it's this idea of how do you make their work pop and how do you make their work stand out. And most of the time it comes down to this exact conversation of like tightening your composition, separating focal points, and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and it also comes down to treating the model as a whole, because it's very easy to get drawn into specific things, painting those small areas the best you can, but not really thinking of the big picture.
Yeah. Absolutely.
If you isolate anything on this model, it's going to look lovely. But when you view it as a whole, that's when you start to notice things that could be better. And that necessarily, you're making certain areas worse, but the overall model becomes better. Yeah.
I think we also need to be aware of inherent weaknesses and bias when it comes to miniatures. When you start to paint something, so the reality is, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female or whatever. There are certain things that we are attracted to. There are certain things that are more appealing. And when it comes to sexualized models, you've got things like hips are something that we're always drawn to, breasts, obviously. And in this model, you have both. So you've got to be like, well, I've got to downplay some of it, and I've got to work with others. And some things you just can't get away from.
Yeah.
So yeah, but overall, really, really nice piece. Pretty similar to the feedback on with Ali's one, to be honest.
I've only got one last thing.
Okay.
It's kind of a cheat code, especially for black and white.
Okay.
If you don't go to pure white across the model, just put a pure white dot in the eyes.
Yeah.
Kind of cheats that, and you get a nice compositional drawing factor.
To the face. Yeah. The other thing is as well, we said that we can only use black and white. Well, a little bit of fluoro white is quite powerful when it comes to this stuff as well. I never said you couldn't do that. You people need to learn how to bend the rules. Right, okay. Honestly, lovely piece. Really, really nice. I really like it. Yeah. Okay, next. Well, so I've only got one picture for everyone, with the exception of this piece. This is Gwax. El-Gwakamol. I absolutely adore this model. I have this model.
So do I. I won't be surprised if everyone has this model, but it's a scary one to paint.
If you don't, I would suggest you buy it now, or get hold of it, because I can't say too much, but it's very possible that you're not going to be able to get big child models for the foreseeable future. Yeah.
Black Crow.
Oh, I thought this one was big child.
Yeah, everyone's safe. You don't have to worry about it.
Oh, my bad. I'll shut up. I could have swore this was big child. Well, I can't be right all the time. Not everyone is that perfect. Anyway, yeah, I love this model. I think it's an amazing sculpt. Right. So I'll tell you what I do really like about this. I think there are a couple of parts that are genuinely stunning, and I'm just going to circle them. I actually really like the lower section. I think the texture in the leather is absolutely stunning, and the volumes on that fabric are so nice, like so well done, like really, really pretty. And I think the face is really great. The volume interpretation on the face is really good, and like the freckles break up what is effectively a very plain face, like quite a flat face. There's not a lot of interest in it, so the scar and the freckles is a great idea. The eyes are really nicely done. And yeah, like overall it's lovely. Those areas are what I particularly like.
Yeah, and like what we said previously about creating a vignette almost. He's done this for this piece, and also you can see a very clear difference in materials. So
vignette's a very big word is a word that's thrown around a lot, right? A lot of people are not going to understand that. So just elaborate on that one if you don't mind.
So everything around the focal area, say the focal area is her chest and face, that's nice and bright, and everything around that gets darker, so you kind of create a natural kind of highlight spot that stands out from the rest of the materials, even if it doesn't necessarily react how you'd expect to, say, your reference photos that you take at the start with black and white, where everything's going to be evenly lit. Like you can see the top of that helmet, if you took a photo in black and white primer, is going to be really bright compared to how it is painted. But if we go against that, you kind of get a bit more of a cinematic feel to your model. And I think it really benefits this piece because it is full of drama. It's very cinematic and painterly. So if you lean into that, you get a really nice result just like this.
Okay, so feedback wise, what's interesting for me is when I look at this piece, we talk about focal points quite a lot, and as a general rule, we want, like, as a good rule of thumb is 3 focal points. 1 main focal point, 2 secondaries to draw people around the model. The face is very clearly a focal point. It's like a really, really great job. But then I don't really feel like I'm being forced to look anywhere else. And I'm kind of drawn to the boobs because it's an armored bra, right? And it's shiny. And then I'm drawn to this because it's really, really nicely painted. And I kind of feel like that's not necessarily the choice. Like I think there's a little bit of a missed opportunity to push more interest in secondary focal points. Like the blade is really nice. It looks like there is blood on the blade, right? That's really, really cool. Well, the problem with that is in black and white is that can get lost. And like unless you're really trying to notice it, that's hard to notice. So potentially what can happen is it's more useful. And I'm not saying that you like Gwak changes this or anything, because it's genuinely lovely, because you can keep the blood but make the spear brighter or more shiny. And what it will do is it will pull as a 3rd focal point or a 2nd focal point, depending on how you're at, where you're at. So you can still have the blood, obviously, because it can drip over the shiny part. But for me, the big point of improvement where it's going to help quite a lot is I ultimately think that we're missing a very clear viewer's map. Yeah. And
you don't necessarily need to drastically change the volumes if you want to bring a lot of leaning into that cinematic feel. Especially on the non-metallic bits like the blade and the helmet, you could just add glints. It's something I like doing a lot.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, I should probably point out the paint over that I've just done is like wildly extreme, right? Don't do what I've just done. I've done it that extreme to show what I'm talking about, right?
And there's only one area that I think shouldn't be there, and that's the highlight on the shaft of the spear. It's a bit bright, but I understand why it's there. Because at that viewing angle in the black and white primer, it's going to be shiny. But it doesn't necessarily, because when you look at a black and white primer, you're looking at shiny plastic, not necessarily wood and how it would behave. So
I also think there's I've had this debate so many times with so many people. I really do think rule of cool, right, or artistic interpretation, whatever you want to call it, is so massively important, because sometimes something should be there, but it's beneficial to downplay that and do what looks better from a compositional point of view.
And even if you were to take that highlight and put it on the hand,
I was thinking exactly the same thing. Please stop saying shaft.
Okay.
It's a handle. We'll go with handle.
Okay.
Well, whatever, but because it's just showing how immature I am. Okay, yeah. So, and I think what we should do is the freehand's really, really cool. Like, I think it would be a shame not to show it off.
Yeah. It adds a lot.
Yeah, it adds a huge amount. I think when it comes to freehand, something to bear in mind is the more, in my experience, right? And I would consider myself a competent person when it comes to freehand, right? The more brush marks you have, the smaller the marks you have, the more realistic the freehand will become, right? So what we've got on this shield is clearly an owl's head. It's lovely, it's great. Actually, if there was, and it's quite large brush marks for those feathers, if the brush marks were built up more and built more smaller in the same way, you would have a result which is a little bit more based in realism.
Yeah.
So it's lovely. I'm not criticizing. It's a stylistic finish. It looks lovely. It's just, if you wanted to take it to the next step or change it, that would be my advice.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, cool. Anything else to add on Athena?
Maybe on the back view, the plume on the helmet, if that edge of the, give it edge highlight, but stipple it.
Yeah. So like a broken edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair.
That's a small one.
Cool. Right, next up we have Esme's piece. Now, big surprise, Esme's painting half-naked ladies. You start this one, what do we think?
I think it's got a lot of drama,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of, it's leaning into the model very well.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a very readable silhouette,
Mm-hmm.
and the lighting's nice and strong. I feel like it suits the model.
Yeah.
What she's gone for.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I know, I completely agree. I'm really, in a way, I kind of conflicted with this one, in the sense of, I think you're absolutely right. The lighting's lovely. The paintwork is, the volume interpretation is really, really good. It's highlighting the important parts of the model.
Yeah.
And I think the darks are so extreme in those areas on the inner thigh, the underarms, the side of the head. Like, that's adding so much drama.
Yeah.
But the reason why I'm conflicted is on the flip side of that, like, I would like some light within those areas, like some secondary bounce lights, some secondary reflections, some bounce lights even. And the risk with that is the more of those you put in, potentially what's going to happen is it's a very hard balance, because you might just lose the drama.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Another thing that I really like about it, and like how we've been saying how skin is really difficult to paint smooth.
Yeah.
And this skin isn't smooth, but I love it.
Yeah.
Because it adds so much to it.
Yeah, it's right up your alley.
You can see.
Yeah.
But another thing with bounce lights, as soon as you start introducing them to your skin, it dramatically increases the complex nature of painting it.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very easy to paint this first light, but then you've got to start to consider how strong are these bounces going to be, where they're going to come from.
Yeah. So I've added a few like very, very subtle bounce lights, and they're very obvious and almost cumbersome. And they're very subtle, and it still kind of maintains it, but it's already bordering on losing that drama. And how bright you go with bounce lights on something like this is difficult, because the minute you start pushing too bright, it starts to look a little bit, let's say, cartoony.
Yeah, it's down to a stylistic choice.
Yeah.
Because you see a lot of people really have a lot of fun with their bounce lights, and it makes no sense, but it looks cool.
Yeah, honestly, I'm quite like that, because I'm just like, do you know what? I do what I like. It's fun. So it's entirely up to you how you do it. I think it's just one of those things where it's like it can be quite a hard trade-off.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my feedback bit. Oh, okay, yeah, good. I was about to ask, what have you got to add?
It's the white fabric for the clothes.
Yeah.
It's too bright overall. It kind of, because you've got really nice volume interpretation on the skin.
Mm-hmm.
That fabric doesn't quite follow that. I think it should be darker in certain areas.
Yeah.
And then, similarly to that, the dark bit of the ponytail.
Yeah.
Too dark.
Okay.
Same as the skin, just add some more light. Because when you look at it on top of the head, I feel like it's quite a bright coloured hair.
Mm-hmm.
The shadows, I can't tell what it is.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's fair. One thing that I would add as well, and this might be a little bit of a weird comment. Sometimes you have to blend things, right? Because if you don't, it looks weird, right? So blends don't have to be perfect, but the transition here on the underwear, because that's so harsh, this looks like dirt, mud, whatever you want your brain, wherever you want your brain to go. So just softening that line, so it is actually a shadow, so it looks like a shadow, it helps massively.
And it's also on the shadow side of the torso. You can see when it gets to that shadow side, it's the same value as the other side in the light. So that's the only thing that really needs to change. Yeah.
So like this whole thing effectively, I keep going across the purple. So this whole thing effectively would be just darker.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes it's important based on context of where something is, to have a nice gradient. Otherwise, it can just look. Let's just say it can look off. Yeah. But yeah, honestly, I love this. Really, really nice. I think it's really cool. All right, wicked. Next up, we have Lady Goldfinch.
Mm-hmm. It's a very cool model.
Yeah, the model's really cool. It's really dynamic. I think this is a really well painted model, which is no surprise, frankly, from Gold.
Yeah.
I think it's missing a lot of the top end.
Mm.
So the paintwork is obviously awesome as always. At the moment, like there are a few points where the head, for example, here, that highlight on the, I don't even know what that is, cloak. So there are points here where if you push them ever so slightly, in comparison to everything else, just all of them around there, and then that just, I would probably say on that arm there. There we go. Now it's genuinely exceptional. And the thing is, the reason why I'm jumping straight to, if you do this, this is going to lift it massively, is because every time Goldfinch paints something, it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
She's genuinely an incredible painter. There's not a huge amount. There's not a huge amount we can go over with this because it's lovely.
There's not a lot of feedback to give.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And something when you're doing the black and white challenge, you find you've got to be very conscious not to chase white.
Yeah.
And you've got to be reserved so you can make the most out of what you've got, because you've eliminated hue and saturation, so you've only got value to play with.
Yeah.
So you've got to be quite selective where you put it.
Absolutely. And the thing with this is the blade is very clearly a focal point.
Yeah.
If you up that section of the head is clearly the focal point. So you've now got two, and then you get the fun of going, well, where's my third? And I think with this model as well, it's really cool because there's so many options. You could obviously push the bird as a third focal point if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Or you could push the cape and have like a nice triangle. For me, I've got this weird thing about thighs, right? So for me, sorry?
And layers.
And layers. Yeah, don't even start. Do not even go there. But yeah, so like I would push the light on that thigh.
Yeah.
Because that's just the sort of thing that I'd like, and I'd play down the eagle or the bird or the pigeon or whatever it is. It's entirely up to you. It's clearly not a pigeon. It's clearly up to you as the painter. Do you know what I mean? But this model's got so much potential for that triple focal point. So yeah. Anyway, that's my ramble.
I just want to end feedback by saying I think this is an absolutely tiny model, but going by the size of the base, and I think the cleanliness of the paint job is really good.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't know how small this model is, but now that you say it, I think that's probably the case. Yeah, with the face, like that face looks absolutely minuscule.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But to be fair, again, this is Goldfinch, so like she can do better. Yeah, no, joking aside, it's absolutely lovely. All right, so this one is Koalas. Now, I think this is really cool. So this is a 28mm model.
tiny.
Yeah, so this one is small. I tell you what I really like actually, is the fact that it's very clearly, the focus is all up here. Yeah. Like, it's really, really well done. And then what happens is, this entire section here is clearly very dark, and then he's just slapped the white straight onto, I think that's supposed to be smoke, but regardless, I don't care. So you've got a very clear, like, 2 focal point piece. Like, you look here and then you look here. Yeah. And he's been really reserved with the fabric down here to create that separation. And I think that's wicked because, again, composition is so huge when it comes to miniatures.
Yeah, I agree. And also, it's a small model, but what I really like about this is there's so many different materials, which are really challenging to render. And when I first looked at it, I thought the incense burner was a flame because it does get so bright.
Yep.
But it kind of needs to be there because if it was treated as smoke, it would be really dark, and you wouldn't get the interesting bounce like that he's given to the band braces.
Yep.
Brings more dimension to the piece.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay. I really like it. I think it's wicked. So I think the bounce lights are a really interesting one. Yeah. Because the bounce lights are really cool because they're clearly coming off of, let's say, the smoke, right? Yeah. Well, that's how it feels. Now, on the flip side of it, if you, like, let's just go extreme. If I was to get rid of those bounce lights, right? If I was to get rid of those bounce lights, so I'm not saying this is the right decision, by the way. We're just talking about, like, alternatives. What happens is, and then you push the shadow on the underside of the hands, well, you create a physical separation between the 2 halves as well. And I'm not saying that's better, but it can potentially, like, separate your focal points more, your focal areas more. And I do think the bounce lights are the better option, I'd like to point out. But I think it's really cool to look at alternatives just as a whole. Yeah. What do you think? What's your thoughts?
I prefer the bounce lights, I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't stress that enough. The bounce lights are better.
I think you've got a lot of value contrast in the head and shoulders. And it should be there. But because you've got the less contrast in the bottom half, it feels quite monotone. In the deep recesses, I think it could be darker, like where you've got the scrolls, or I don't know what to call them, but the parchment that comes down. It needs more illusion shadow for readability.
Yeah,
and
I think...
especially when you've got the robe on the foot, it could be a bit darker.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting with this is, again, it's not necessarily... There's lots of ways of doing this, right? So let's say, for example, if we push the lower values, right, the darker values, more in the lower half, right? Let's just do a really dodgy paint over and do this. I'll bring back those bounce lights because we're both in agreement. They still look good, so we'll just do that. There we go. So what's interesting is if you push the lower values, the darker values in the lower half, it's really good, it really helps. And on the flip side of that is, I know it's supposed to be like a metallic, but you don't always have to go extreme dark everywhere, even with metallics. So actually, if you lower the value range in the top half, then potentially, especially around the helmet, then what you can potentially do is you can separate the 2 halves even further, right? Because now what you've got is you've got less darks in the top half, so it's predominantly brighter, and then you've got more darks in the lower half, so it's predominantly darker. So you can enforce what you've done even further by doing that. And again, it's not really better, it's just alternative routes, alternative options, which I think is helpful to people. But yeah, I think this is really cool, I like it.
Yeah.
I also think it's quite hard to do in black and white.
Yeah, it's tiny, you've got loads of different materials, and the volumes and shapes are complex, especially for non-metallic. The helmet, it's not easy, and it's done really well. Yeah.
So, yeah, lovely, awesome. Really, really cool. I'll tell you what I do, I'm just going to point this out as well. Koala normally paints always with true metal metallics, so this forces him to paint non-met because you can't use TMM when you're doing a black and white challenge.
TMM's really nice as well because he paints it almost like non-metallic.
Yeah, I mean, like, because I know I'm going to get loads of grief from randos on the internet. I do not believe non-met is better than true met, right? I don't believe that in the slightest, but I do think there are benefits from a learning perspective to painting non-met, right? So when you're forced to do it every so often, it can help because it's just a more extreme version of what we normally paint, right? So that's my point. So it's really cool to see that here. Anyway, right. KSauce. Yeah, I'll let you start on this one. We've got a fair few female models in this challenge. So light's coming from the left hand side quite clearly.
And that sells well. And again, it's a really difficult model to paint. Going with skin tones, it's a very big challenge in black and white.
Yeah,
I think you've rendered the volumes really nicely, and there's a lot of character to the face. You can see her facial expression really clearly.
The eyes off to one side is wicked.
Yeah, and the specular light is very clear.
Yeah.
Which adds a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have anything more to that. There's...
Need some time to digest it a bit.
What was that?
Need some time to digest it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the fun of doing it this way, isn't it? Because we don't get time to really go over these things. I think it's pretty much it. The volume like the character is really good. The volume interpretation is really nice. There's not much to this model, so there's not a huge amount to say in that regards. I think there's a couple of bits where this shadow on the breast I think is a little bit too large.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit too extreme just here on the lower half.
Yeah, like the main light source is very clear and it's rendered really well, but it needs something to balance that because it's a very dramatic kind of light setup.
Yeah.
And it's leaving a lot of pure black that isn't balanced out yet, and you need that for skin especially.
I also think there's a good opportunity for contrast in sharpness on this. So one thing that we don't talk about a huge amount, when you have a piece which has lots of soft shapes, right? The female form is a perfect example of this. When you have models like this, well, everything is very soft, everything is very curved, right? There isn't a huge amount of sharp angles. Whereas in actually what can happen is if you're maybe a little bit more extreme with your line work, so in this case it's just edge highlights, but line work can mean everything, right? Line work can be like a recess between two muscles or something like that. But basically what happens is if you're a little bit more extreme with your line work, you create a contrast in finish in itself. So, and this is something that I personally really enjoy doing because I don't tend to paint with extreme brush marks everywhere. I like a smooth finish, that's how I enjoy painting, or a refined finish maybe. So as soon as you have something like that and you go, right, I'm going to slap a really hard line within that, well, you create a different type of contrast, and that can be a huge amount of fun. And can give some really, really interesting results. So the reason why I say it here is because it's an opportunity on the helmet to get some hard marks where you don't have that anywhere else.
Yeah. And one more thing to point out, which I really like, which done with the skin, is the brush strokes tend to follow the shape of the volume, and that accentuates the curvature.
Yeah.
And because it's easier, not easier, but people fall into the trap of just doing the same brush stroke.
Yeah.
No matter the direction of the volume.
Yeah, that's fair.
And when you follow that around, you accentuate the volume. Yeah.
Yeah. Really cool. Really, really interesting model. All right, next up we have SloppyBeast. Now, this is right up your alley. This is your sort of painting all over. Yeah. Well, it's your sort of painting as well. Lots of brush marks, lots of texture.
And there's lots of characters to the face because this model isn't sculpted necessarily to look that old. But the way he's rendered the face, especially with the eye bags and the smile lines and the face, it brings a lot of grit and age to this guy. Like he's seen a lot of battles. Yeah. He's been around a lot, and I think that really helps because again, I said it before, but you're eliminating a lot of areas for interest with the hue and saturation. You just got value to work with your light and dark.
Yeah.
And he's making the most out of it with this model. There's tons of character in this guy.
Yeah, completely agree. I think honestly, like, this is an incredible paint job. Every decision just adds a huge amount to it, right? So for example, the cast shadow on the neck, from the head.
On the hands, yeah.
I was about to say the same thing. Yeah, this is amazing. Like the texture work is just like, if we zoom in, those brush marks are just so, how can I put it? Warranted. Do you know what I mean? Every brush mark is just adding so much to it. I think it's awesome. Like really, really good. Absolutely. Like the face is exceptional. Yeah, I mean, we're going to be splitting hairs here when we pull this apart, like when we try and give constructive feedback. So like, for example, the face is lovely. The eyes are potentially getting a little bit lost within that face. So maybe some stronger framing around the eyes would help with that. I think there's an element of this side of the fabric is kind of blending in together when you look at it in comparison to the others. So when I zoom out, because remember we're always, and this isn't you, I'm speaking like for anyone who's watching this, but ideally we judge our models from further away for the illusion. And this whole side is just so great, and then this side is still great, but it's harder to understand what's going on with the volumes of those shapes in that area.
Yeah.
And I think that would probably be my feedback here.
Yeah. The only things I would add is maybe on the anatomy side of things, on his wrist that is holding the hilt of the sword. You can see the lines that are going down.
Yeah, this one.
The value is a bit too harsh.
Fair.
That could be smoothed out because you don't really have tendons. You've only got muscles there, and it's not sculpted to be very muscular.
Yep.
So it can be flattened out a bit. And then if you look up a bit further in the crook of the arm, there's a highlight in that.
Right, okay.
In the armpit. And that's clearly there from like a light reference photo.
What, this one?
Yeah, but based on the material, I don't think it should be there.
I'll be honest with you, I wonder whether that's from the camera.
True, yeah.
But I do get it, that one, yeah. Yeah.
And the only other thing would be the face of the neck. It's for the same reasons as the wrist. You've got a lot of shapes going on, and the value contrast is too harsh.
So you talk about this?
Yeah.
Honestly, I get it. I actually felt like that was a tattoo.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
I could be wrong. We could be both wrong.
We could both be wrong. But I agree that there's line work there. It's not needed if it's skin or something like that. I kind of, because those lines are so extreme, I thought it was like a tattoo or something like that.
Yeah.
But fair.
And the only last bit I would say is that part of the hair. Compared to the rest, you've got really nice separation in your marks.
Yeah.
That kind of feels like a solid shape. And it doesn't read as hair necessarily to me.
Interesting. Okay. So, and this is a fun conversation. I disagree. I like it that way. So I don't think either of us is wrong here. It's artistic choice. I don't like too much separation in the hair. I prefer it in I prefer it painted in like clumps as a whole, and then like the odd line or mark. But again,
it comes down to how shiny you want your hair.
Absolutely, this is exactly it, isn't it? So yeah, I think it's a fair point. I don't necessarily agree with it, so we can always agree to disagree. We don't paint the same. But yeah, okay, cool, awesome piece. Like really, really nice actually. Right, Onionhammer. Now, I'm going to point something out here. I feel like I should say this before we go any further, because I think bias is very important, or lack of. I really dislike this model.
Well, I really like this model.
Yeah, okay, so I've got to be careful how much my bias is affecting any feedback here. So, fair warning to everyone, I don't like this model, so I'm going to try and... Feedback is probably going to come more from Lucas on this one.
Okay, do you want to start then?
Yeah, so what I do like, I really like, from a painter perspective, I really like whatever that moon thing is. The marks, the scuffs are really, really cool because it's fairly smooth. The brush, there's brushwork in it, so there's a little bit of texture. But basically, those marks are like it's quite recent because there isn't a huge amount of texture in it to imply that it's worn or battered or anything like that. So those are really recent, and I think that's really cool, especially as like as soon as she walks through a door frame, she's gonna be like smacking it all the time because it's anyway. So I absolutely love that. I think it's like really, really nice detail. It's a really nice material that's painted. I also like the fact that this is an opinion. That ring thing, right, hasn't been painted super shiny, right? Because I feel like when I see this model, everyone goes, right, that's an earring within a horn or whatever the hell that is. It's like, oh, I've got to do it shiny, and then it becomes very distracting and over the top. So I like that. I actually really like that they haven't gone that extreme with it, frankly. So yeah, that's really, really cool. Yeah.
I think this is a very difficult model to paint. We've said this a lot, and I think people should be commended because they've chosen particularly hard models to paint.
Yeah, why has everyone done like half-naked females? Like, this is not easy to do, especially when you're just going, oh, I'm going to work with white.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. To choose to paint, and I think we've done this really well. You've got a nice volume interpretation across the model.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it suffers from readability. You clearly looked at the model and studied it. You know where to put your paint. The only thing I would say is you need to push the value contrast a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've got a lot of value in the lower half of the torso, but once we start getting up to the neck or clavicle,
yeah,
I can't tell whether that's painted or it's just the model being shiny.
Yeah.
But that's a focal area, especially on a model like this. We've said it before, the vignette.
Yeah.
It's kind of counter look to that. The bottom of the model is nice and shiny, but the face needs to be brought up, especially around the neck.
Yeah, so if we go to the neck, for example, and like even like it starts around the breast, like we can just remove some of those darks. Like you don't need that much extreme dark everywhere. If you, at the very least, like brighten up the whole value range on the top section, that would have a huge impact.
Yeah. And again, it comes down to taking photos in black and white. It's great to learn your volumes.
Yeah.
But you're not learning how a material behaves.
Yeah.
So it comes down to looking at lots of reference pictures of actual people.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other thing I would add for the power of the piece is having a nice bounce line on the other side to cap that form.
Oh, you talk about the framing for the face.
Yeah.
So,
or even if you don't add a bounce light, maybe adding more light to the hair.
Yeah.
You can keep the skin nice and dark. Almost like a dramatic lighting like Caravaggio.
Yeah.
If you have that framing on the face.
So it doesn't get lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, cool. I mean, genuinely, it is a lovely paint job.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a great paint job on a hard model.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great paint job on a terrible model. Hard model.
Fair enough.
I just don't get it. Like, I just don't. But anyway, yeah. Great job. Really, really cool. So we've got a few more to do. Spacemoo.
It's another mind work one. Do you like this one?
Nope.
No? Oh, I like it.
Big surprise.
He looks like he's done with the day.
Yeah.
And again, volume interpretation is done really well. You can tell the difference in material because like the leather on the shoulder doesn't go up to meet the same value as the skin and the hair.
Yeah.
You can tell the different materials.
Yeah. Texture work is lovely.
Yeah.
Really, really nice. Even like just as subtle as like, so these two materials here, the brush marks look like they're going in the same direction. So the brush marks are doing this on both of them. But just because the brush marks are larger on this one in comparison to this one, gives a really great difference in feel to that material. It's such, it's so good, so cool. Really, really like it. I like the lighting as well. I really like the lighting.
Yeah, you've got a good compositional value. You know where to look. You're not being drawn too far down the piece. You're focusing on the face.
Yeah, very clearly. I think the eyes are quite are really cool as well. As in, just the eyes overall sell so much misery, like because there's so much dark there. Really, I think it's really brave, which is great. Really lovely.
The only thing I would add, if I was to add anything, is the lighting on this side of the face is very stark.
Yeah.
And this cheekbone kind of falls into the background too much.
Yeah.
I think you could bring up a bit more.
That's fair. Oh.
I mean, what is it called? Like a Caravaggio or Rembrandt triangle. Even if it doesn't look like that on the model, it looks a bit off.
Yeah.
To our eyes.
Yeah, it's that battle of, even if it's not necessarily correct, sometimes we need relatable things, because people don't look at this stuff long enough, right? We talk about, like, most people look at the model for like 5 or 6 seconds. Do you know what I mean? 20 seconds at a push, and they don't take everything in. They take in like features, which is why we go with multiple focal points. So you need to sell enough, and anything where it's like this is naturally recognizable, that's incredibly powerful. So yeah.
And I know I said the values are quite nice. You've got a nice vignette, but I think you could push it even more on the torso to render it as a cylinder.
Yeah, so this was my feedback. What it feels like at the moment, the head is very clearly brighter, but there's higher contrast range in the head. The lower half is still very flat in comparison. So basically one of the big things that I would do is, if you lower the value range just overall on the torso, like that cylindrical shape, straight away what you do is you increase the strength of your bright on the torso. You're removing a huge element of that lower half, and again you're basically minimizing your focal area, which is incredibly powerful. And one of the things that's kind of happening is some areas are getting lost within each other. So like the straps, when we zoom out, like they're kind of blending together a little bit, and you can take this opportunity to push the dark sections of those straps. And then you're increasing the amount of darker values that you have. And then once again, that's helping to push focus upwards. Yeah. I would also say the shoulder feels a little bit like, when you look at the amount of light that's coming down for that shoulder, like there's a massive chunk of light here on the head that would extend to the shoulder. Now you don't need to go extreme bright. You could actually go darker with the shoulder if you want, but I'm going to go brighter for now. And it also feels like, if you look at how bright the hair is as it curves over the shoulder, it doesn't continue. So a slight push, I'm going to go brighter, a slight push on the shoulder around that area, so it's got a little bit more of a natural drop off, will make it feel a little bit more natural with the progression of that light. But anyway, yeah, really cool. Right, lovely. So next one is going to be Thor. Now, I'm going to put this out there. I absolutely adore this, and I think this is one of the coolest pieces he has done, and probably, I'm going to say, one of the best pieces I think he's done.
I would have to agree.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
This is wicked. Yeah.
It's the cast shadow from the cat.
Yeah.
But having the value just right for the rest of the eyes.
Which is actually really hard to do.
They don't get lost at all.
Yeah, it's crazy hard to get that balance right.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is honestly wicked.
And again, like the materials for this, you've got a lot of different materials across the model.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they got just the value range. You know exactly what they are.
Yep.
Almost how they feel, like especially the cat with the stippling and the texture. You can feel it.
Yeah.
And the cheekbone highlight. It's only there.
Yeah, that glint is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is amazing. Really great. So let's try and be a bit picky about it. So I'll start off. The texture work, I think, is all very similar. It's all a little bit too similar for me. I'd like a little bit more variation. Even if it was just like some of the texture work was a little bit sharper. Like the brush marks were a little bit sharper in some areas. As an example, like so let's just, I'm just gonna see if I can do this. Right, so if I was to go over the shirt, right, and I was to it's gonna change the values, but that's not the goal here. So if I was just simply to smooth out those brush marks, right, so they're less extreme, right, so maybe this takes a little bit of glazing over what you've done. This means that the shirt is a smoother material, and then when you go to the jacket, if we were sharper with the actual, what are we going to use? Let's just do that. This is going to be terrible, but you'll get the idea. And then what would happen is, if we were sharper with the actual material, the brush marks on the jacket, so more opaque, potentially, and a little bit more like haphazard, what happens is it separates the material a little bit more. And it makes it a little bit more extreme. I don't know why I'm using a web brush, but you get the idea. Like when I zoom out, I'll get it. So you can see how you still maintain the same kind of texture, because there's nothing wrong with that, but just changing the sharpness of that texture can really differentiate the actual materials themselves. And I think that could be quite powerful on this.
Yeah, the texture work across the model is great.
Yeah.
But there's no different materials.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you said for the cloth on the shirt and the tie, they should be smoother. But for the leather and metals, I don't think you necessarily need to make them darker. It would be nice to play around with the highlights.
Yeah.
Because leather will have a little bit of a sheen. It's not necessarily going to be really old leather. It's going to be well used, but it's still going to have some sheen and react to the environment.
Yeah.
But especially the metal bits on the lapel, on the top of the hat.
Yeah.
They can have a bit more glint to it.
Yeah. Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, I mean, I think it's wicked. Do you know what? What I will say, and this is an artistic choice, not the correct choice. What I would say is potentially what you could do is, because of the light coming down from the right-hand side, you could push the dark overall on the left-hand side as we look at it of this jacket.
Yeah.
And then what happens is, or even like, because you've got the car shadow under the hat, you could push what is clearly a dodgy car shadow that I've just put in. You could push the shadow on that side and it would increase the drama.
Yeah.
So that would probably be my feedback for this, but really nice, genuinely fantastic. I love this, really, really impressed with this one. I really want to see this in person actually. Okay, cool. Right, so I've got to be careful what I say here, because this is like Lucas's protege.
Okay.
This is Travis. Right, so I think
had a mare with this. Honestly, the amount of times he's painted this, and every time it looks amazing, he thinks it looks bad.
Right.
But we've got to keep telling him it looks great, because it is great.
I'm just going to point out that's every Travis's paint job. He paints everything amazing and then goes, I don't like it. Okay, cool. So I'll start this one because he is your student. It is exceptional. It's really, really great. The skin, what's really interesting, I think the skin is too smooth, right? But it works because it's not human.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like the skin is a little bit too smooth. And actually, I think you could push that further. I think if you pushed it even smoother, if you could be bothered, right, and went for almost like a plasticky porcelain, like it would not be any detriment to this. So I think that's really, really cool. I love the car shadow on the head. I like the texture on the whatever that is, blouse, jacket, half a coat, I don't know, piece of fabric. I really like the texture on it. I think it's a great result. Yeah, like genuinely really nice. The eyes are wicked. Eyes are proper cool, really creepy, weird as hell.
Yeah. It's got a really good unsettling vibe to it, leaning into the model.
Yeah.
And like you said, the materials are all rendered really well.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I would add to what you said already, especially on the skin, is just the ridge on the nose.
Yeah.
The value range is a bit too much.
Yeah.
Compared to the shadow of the skin, that nose goes well beyond that.
Yeah.
So it's softening their features. I know it's probably sculpted quite sharp.
Yeah.
If you just round off the edges, add a little bounce light
Mm-hmm.
to the I've forgotten the word, but that bit,
Yeah.
it will help out a lot.
Okay. So my feedback on this, like, this is obviously a stunning paint job. Travis is an incredible painter. I think that I really I dislike the line work on this when it comes to the edge highlights on these crosses. So there's basically a consistent, almost a consistent, or it feels like almost a consistent edge highlight around these crosses, and there's an edge highlight everywhere. And if you want to place an edge highlight everywhere on a shape, there's nothing wrong with that. But what's really important is this idea of consistency of your illusion, right? Consistency of your finish. And when you're painting something like this, and although it's a creepy alien demon, whatever it is your painting style is based in a style that's very much imitating realism, right? So what happens is when you put an edge highlight just around these everywhere, it feels a little bit off, right? You only need the edge highlights that are relevant. So you don't need the edge highlights that are facing downwards, right? Or the edges that are facing downwards, those edge highlights that you put into place can be much less extreme. So I'm finding that quite jarring on this because it's very much, it doesn't suit the style of the finish for the model. And I know it's such a weird thing to pick out, but it's something that I see quite a lot, and it's quite frustrating. So that's probably the biggest thing where I'd be like, no, adjust those. Other than that, it's cool. Also,
I can't really think of much more.
What's this? Why is there a random triangle in your horns, Travis? What's going on?
What? Take it away, I can't see.
Look. You see it?
Just about.
There's a triangle. It's like he's dropped his paintbrush on it. That's how picky I'm being with this. I'm sorry, but he's a great painter. Why is there a triangle? I can't unsee it. Anyway, it's lovely. Nice job, Ben. Genuinely. Okay, cool. Right, we've got two more. Your turn.
That's a difficult model.
This is an amazing model. Amazing. I love this Stormcast. Stormcasts are amazing.
Another really difficult model to paint.
Yes. I agree.
Arguably more difficult than the previous one from Koala.
Yeah.
Because there's just so much going on and it's hard to get into those recesses.
Everything is covered.
And it's a push fit, so...
Is it? I didn't know that.
It's from the new box set, whatever it's called.
No, I don't know.
But everything's rendered really nice. You can see all the detail and there's a clear difference in materials when you look at the cape and then the armour panels around it.
Yeah.
They look nice and shiny. Yeah, it's all rendered really nice.
Yeah. I think it's really cool. I think I really like the textural difference again. Like there's only so much that like the stuff that we're going to like is always going to be similar because it's ultimately a black and white challenge. I think this model poses a few challenges that we should talk about. So first of all, because of the line in the arms where they're bridging the peak of the axe head, the handle, your actual bright area is very small. So it can be quite hard to make that a feature, and I think that's done really well on this. So it's very clear, like, here's the focal point, and then what I think has also happened, this area here is like an island of light in all that dark.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that's really cool because we've tried, it feels like it's very clear, tried to push 3 focal points. Yeah. And the thing with this one is you don't always need 3 focal points, that's the goal. But the thing with this one is if you don't do something in the middle here, right, that's a massive chunk of dark that where just nothing's going on and this model is boring, right?
Yeah,
because
forcing your hand in that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's really well managed on this. I think that's quite impressive. I think what's weird, this is going to be a weird bit of feedback, right? Well, a lot of people are going to think this is weird because it's not something that I say very often. I think compositionally this is really great, and I think if we're trying to give feedback where what's going to actually help people the most in their current development is actually priority that I would be working on with this person if they were a student is I would be going, actually, let's park the composition side of it as a focus. And I would be going, let's work on the actual technical finish of work. I'd be going, let's work on the blending. Let's work, not blending, but let's work on the finish, right? Because what you've got is compositionally, you've got something that's really great and you've got a nicely painted model. The texture on the fabric is really, really cool. And I think the priority should be around refining. Yeah. And I don't say that very often to anyone, to be honest. So yeah, but what's your thoughts?
I think this model is a lot better than it's letting on because I don't think the white background is necessarily helping.
You reckon?
We can see. Yeah.
Okay, fair.
The only thing I would add is I would add a bit more light to the shoulders and the head. I wouldn't add it to the headdress. I don't call that the spike.
Yeah.
Because it's a vertical flat shape. It's going to be dark. But you can push the drama and especially attention to the head.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It's a frame, isn't it? You don't want to brighten it because you want the frame to the head. Yeah.
And you've got a really bright spot on his elbow. Yeah. But that value, I don't see it anywhere else. Mm-hmm. That seems like the brightest point of the model. But it's on his elbow, not on his head. That's what I would change. But I really also, a separate point, I love the axe head. Mm-hmm. It almost has like a serrated feel to it. Yeah. I'm using a lot of people render it quite smooth. Yeah. But giving it a lot of grit. It's really nice. Yeah.
I am going to point out as well, I'm very aware that this was on a base that looks like it might not be finished. So this could actually be a whip, right? And so this is Mecha's, and I'm going to point out, if this is a whip and you didn't actually want us to do the feedback, I'm genuinely sorry. I apologise. Yeah, anyway. Cool. Right, and last one, Winnie. Right, this model is amazing for a start, right? We talk about bias, this model is wicked.
Yeah, it's full of character.
So good, yeah. I absolutely love what's been done with this. I know the whole cross-eyed thing is pretty much a given. The nosebleed is really cool. This is so good. Like, just wicked. Composition's brilliant. Brush strokes are really, really nice. Absolutely adore this. So good.
Yeah, I think what we've said for everybody else about the vignette and compositional values, really honing in on the face. Yeah. It's perfect for this piece. You know exactly where the eye isn't wandering. You're drawn straight to the selling point of this model.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's not really much for me to add because you've leaned into the strengths of this model so well. Yeah. There isn't really much to say other than it's great. Yeah.
So I literally have one piece of feedback, right, that's relevant, I think. Because obviously, it's worth saying, we've gone over all of these. Everything that we do, it doesn't matter how good you are, there's always loads of things you can improve or change, right? So I think with this one, this is powerful, right? This is a feature that's powerful. And it's obviously meant to be in shadow, right? Now, when we talk about this idea of framing, not everything has to be extreme, right? So, for example, with this, something as simple as going, I'm going to push the edge, even a little bit more extreme than it needs to be. But remember, like, this is about relevance. So you don't have to go extreme bright because it's in an extreme dark area, right? But if I push the frame here, for this, right? It's probably going to be a little bit over the top, but just that simple line work. And I'd probably, if I was painting this, I'd go a little bit more subtle than that. But it's the perfect example of I haven't really changed anything, but I've now created a secondary feature, which adds, I've enforced the secondary feature, which adds a huge amount of storytelling to this. So it literally would be my only feedback on this.
Yeah, just bringing a little bit more to your attention.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise go unnoticed.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is like you've kind of got to force yourself to see that with the way it is on the actual model. So just something like this is genuinely where I was talking about earlier. Hard lines can be incredibly powerful in a soft paint job Because even though this has got brush marks all over it, it is a soft paint job. There's not extreme hard lines anywhere. Well, all of a sudden, like literally 5 hard lines down here are so strong, so powerful, even if you do it in a subtle way, because it is a contrast in like sharpness, let's say. Yeah.
Yeah, this paint job reminds me a bit of John Chan, the way he is light is quite gloomy.
Yeah.
He doesn't use necessarily smooth blends. You can see the brush strokes, but the overall effect is quite soft. Yeah,
absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And even just like the other way that you can think about it is literally in the type of line. Every line on this model that's painted is basically curved.
Yeah.
Right? Well, these are straight lines. Everywhere is curved lines. Now you have a contrast in literally the type of line. It's a straight line as opposed to like it's anyway. Fantastic piece. Really, really cool. Absolutely wicked. Love it.
And that's it. That's the first competition done. Thanks everyone for getting involved with this one. And don't forget, we've got the new competition, the collaboration with Get Good. We were focusing on cute stuff, so feel free to get involved with that, and we'll do this again with them.
Yep, that's it. Thank you everyone for watching. It means a huge amount. As always, make sure you hit the like button. It makes a massive difference to the channel. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want to get involved in these, all you've got to do is join the Discord. It's all free. Feel free to check out the link in the description below. But hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.